Welcome, and thank you for attending the 2013 20th Annual International Conference on Learning in Rhodes, Greece. Today's presentation title is Science, Technology, and Society Program, a 21st Century Perspective, and the study is based on a literature review performed by Stephen Auteri, science teacher at East Haven High School in East Haven, Connecticut of the United States, and Aideen Amashakui, who's an assistant professor of STEM education at DeSales University of Center Valley, Pennsylvania, also located in the United States. So I'd like to begin today by taking a look at some of the objectives that will be examined throughout the presentation. And these include, first of all, discussing science, technology, and society, or STS as we'll refer to it throughout the presentation, as a pedagogical tool. We will try to understand the general format of a socially contextualized unit. Then from there we'll do an examination of the peer-reviewed literature, and we'll focus on some of the key studies highlighting two attributes. First of all, the attitudes of both pre-service and in-service elementary, and when we talk about elementary we'll define that as kindergarten through 6th grade, and secondary, which is 7 through 12. Teachers toward the implementation and use of STS in their classrooms. Finally, we will also look at the attitudes of students toward learning in these STS-style environments. And we'll close out today's presentation with a brief summary and look at some of the gaps that are still present in STS research. So what I'd like to do now is begin our examination of STS today by looking at the opposite end of the spectrum. So we're going to take this as a spectrum today, and on one end of this spectrum is the traditional approach to science teaching and instruction. And on this end of the spectrum, when we talk about this, we're looking at classrooms that are focused on traditional didactic methods of teaching and learning. And some of the attributes of these classrooms include the following: teacher-directed goals and objectives for the learning process. It is very rare to see in these traditional style classrooms opportunities for students to establish their own short and long-term goals for learning. It's a passive learning process, and this is where knowledge is imparted directly from teacher to student. It's a very unidirectional process where students have little ability to construct their own meaning. The teacher doesn't really provide any connectivity to personal experience or previous content knowledge. Laboratory experiences are often scripted with little room for examination of patterns and relationships between the content. Students are often given a step-by-step procedure that leads all groups or individual students to the same overall means or endpoint. And finally, when we talk about formative assessment during the learning process and endpoint or summative assessment, we're usually talking about objective style, factual recall, quizzes, and examinations that often just see the ability for a student to regurgitate information. So now let's switch gears and take a look at the STS approach. So this is the other side of the spectrum. The STS approach is an integrated educational experience, and it makes use of interactions between science and society. We're really taking students out of the textbook, out of the limits of those textbooks, and bringing them into real-world experiences and applications. Students in this STS-style classroom are greatly involved in the decision-making process. In the STS program, students are given a complex issue that they have to examine very deeply. They're often looking at multiple perspectives on an issue. I really want to emphasize the use of the word depth here. We're more focused with the depth, or how deeply a student looks into a content topic, as opposed to breadth. And in the traditional approach, it's more about seeing how many topics, jamming as many of those topics into the curriculum to cover than it is to actually looking at any of the issues in a deep approach. Students develop scientific literacy. One of the big pushes now in the United States is the development of the Common Core standards of learning. And these Common Core standards have an intricate focus on developing literacy through both research and writing skills. Throughout the process, students do have multiple opportunities to engage in both research and writing. It's an active process. This STS advantage really allows for students to have opportunities for peer collaboration, self-reflection, and peer reflection. It's a project-based learning. And when we talk about project-based learning, we're saying that it lends itself very well to multidisciplinary applications. The assessments now are much more authentic. It includes opportunities for students to apply what they've learned and synthesize new information. It's not just a factual recall. So now you must be wondering, can I even embed this in my curriculum? You're telling me all this new stuff, but how am I ever going to get this to fit in with all of the material that I already need to cover? And the answer to the question is yes, absolutely can you embed this in your curriculum. I want to note that this should not be an independent process of what you are already doing and teaching in your classrooms. A very important researcher who works very closely with STS, Glenn Aikenhead, actually quoted in one of his studies that, quote, STS science, a traditional content is not watered down, but is embedded in a social technological context, end quote. So what he's implying here is that we are not separating out STS style instruction from the normal content matter. This should be integrated into and used as a tool to supplement and support your existing instruction. And STS has been utilized by teachers in studying issues ranging from global warming and a physical science classroom to looking at species extinction in a biology classroom. And students really have the opportunity to grapple with developing important process skills and applying concepts to new and interesting contexts. So let's take a look. What does the format of a socially contextualized unit look like? Well, the common approach is a three-stage process which is known as an issue analysis technique. And what this issue analysis technique allows is for students to actually organize information to understand all facets of an issue. So in the first phase of the issue analysis technique, which we'll identify as the issue identification, this is where the student introduces and defines the important issue that they are going to investigate. From here we move into the second phase. And the second phase is known as the issue analysis. And this is where students acquire information, identify key issues, collect data, and also multiple perspectives on an issue. And writing is a huge critical component in this second phase of the process. This is most likely the phase where students will participate in library research, laboratory experiments, or even participating in qualitative interviews with members of the community or involved stakeholders. And lastly comes the issue resolution. This is where students actually synthesize ways to take action on the issue. They either educate their own classmates and peers, or can even be used to educate members of the local and global community. What I want to emphasize is that STS really provides opportunities for both formative and summative assessment throughout all three phases of the process. So now let's take a look at the current literature review that was conducted by myself and Amma Shakui. And it's important to note that now that we're moving toward the inclusion of STS, we want to focus on what's happened over the last 20 years on how teachers and students view the implementation of STS. We're going to highlight some of the key studies that were focused on in the literature review and show you some of the perspectives and opinions of both teachers and students towards these STS-based strategies. So first, we're going to examine the pre-service teacher perspectives, both in the United States and internationally, on the implementation of STS. And there's two key studies that were utilized internationally. One was produced by Jaeger in 1992, where he actually surveyed a human biology course and found that biology students had greater motivation towards the study of biology when the instructor utilized STS strategies. The second study is conducted by Yalvac in 2007, who studied undergraduate teacher education programs in Turkey. And he found that there's actually 3 different types of teachers based on their style of STS implementation. Utilizing a specific instrument, which is called the Views on Science, Technology, and Society, which is a 114-item survey that is divided into 7 subscales, he was able to conclude that, first of all, there was a type of teacher who realized the real-world contextual approach of STS and was likely to utilize it in their classroom. The second type of teacher was not comfortable in integrating multiple disciplines together successfully. And the final type of teacher that he confronted had great anxiety about planning and setting up these types of STS lessons. And overall, he was able to conclude that teachers who are under the age of 25 were more likely to utilize STS lessons in their classrooms. When we get into the United States, it's really important to note that there is a large disconnect of elementary school teachers between the theory and implementation of STS. Toten and Peterson conducted a study in 2001 where they examined teachers' beliefs and opinions about STS in their classrooms. And they followed 37 different participants with question surveys known as attitude and belief surveys. And they found out a couple interesting facts. First of all, 70% of the teachers surveyed thought that there was a strong emphasis in the curriculum on using social issues. However, only 68% said that curriculum was largely derived from textbooks. So even though they felt that there should be a huge connection in the literature and in the curriculum to STS-style issues, their curriculum was still largely textbook driven. Also, much of what the research is stating now is that elementary teachers felt that they lack confidence to be able to teach science effectively. They feel that they have basic knowledge about what STS is, but again, there is a huge disconnect between learning how to teach it effectively and utilizing it in their classrooms. Again, this is just a graphic that focuses on the 2 international studies presented in the previous slide. And again, just trying to show you that the conclusions that came out from both of these studies. So now let's take a look at this disconnect. Let's try to make more sense out of this disconnect between theory and implementation. And we'll look at some of the studies done on in-service teachers. First of all, Bybee, who conducted a study in 1991, discovered the following: that over 90% of the respondents that he studied supported teaching STS topics. However, only 68% of them were unsure as to how they would approach these societal issues in their classrooms. So he began to ask, what is the challenge for these teachers to implement STS in their classrooms? First of all, he found out that there's a lack of money, resources, and support from administration, specifically lack of a common planning time to establish these particular lessons. Teachers were unsure how to reach the depth of content. Tsai in 2001 really showed us some key things about the benefits to using STS. And he used a scientific epistemological view, or SEV, to tie a teacher's perspective to their instructional pedagogy. And he performed a case study approach that occurred over the course of 3 years, where he studied a veteran female high school science teacher in Taipei, Taiwan, and he did a series of 5 interviews that he recorded with this participant. And what he found while conducting this 3-year survey was that the STS curriculum aligns well to constructivist learning theory, where students are engaged in making meaning of what they're learning. The teachers are able to examine content from multiple perspectives. It also taught students how to deal responsibly with societal issues. One of the major things that we are trying to do, goal-wise, in our science classrooms is to promote creating scientifically literate citizens. Also, it taught students how to be independent thinkers. Students were able to step away from the teacher as the imparter of knowledge and actually utilize techniques to test hypotheses and create their own meaning to the content. So we'll switch gears now and take a look at some of the student perspectives toward participating in these STS-style classrooms. And some of the major studies analyzed in our literature review found the following. First of all, students felt very comfortable working collaboratively with other peers in their classes, and this helped them to develop very strong communication skills and also showed them connections between the same content matter in different subject areas. Secondly, students felt that when they worked with content in this integrated format, it helped them to understand how this connects to real-life applications. They were able to see that this isn't just something they have to learn, that it is something that they're going to confront in their everyday lives. Some of the other key studies. Winther in 1994 examined the achievement of minority students in an inner-city high school traditional learning classroom utilizing chemistry-based curriculum. And he focused on 4 different classes of traditional learners and compared these to 4 classes that were using an STS-based approach. And I'll emphasize that the traditional classrooms were largely based on direct lecture and whole class discussions. And he asked the question, could STS effectively raise the achievement of African American students? And they utilized a curriculum, STS-based curriculum called ChemCom. And what they found was that there was a statistically significant difference between groups where students achieved higher in STS-structured environments. Yeager in 1994 was working on a particular program called the Iowa Chautauqua and found that students actually do obtain the same basic concepts in an STS environment that they would in a traditional-based learning environment. And this study was conducted examining 224 different life science teachers in the process. In terms of assessment in the STS classroom, Amashikui and Kazampor in 2010 were actually able to show in their STS study called the Biodiversity Community Action Project, which was conducted along with 9th and 10th grade biology students, that assessment strategies in STS classrooms could be used to align to teacher learning objectives. Students were able to demonstrate concept applications in projects ranging from articles in local newspapers to internet broadcasts. So we're really seeing students take that turn from factual recall learners to scientifically literate citizens. And then in Jaeger in 2006 was able to show that students had an increased motivation and interest in learning science than those students who were in a textbook-centered atmosphere. So in summary, as we leave today, some of the areas that still need work in terms of STS. There's still a significant lack of knowledge towards how STS instruction is being utilized in elementary school classrooms. We also still need more information on utilizing STS-based studies for both pre-service and in-service teachers. And again, we're seeing that disconnect, that discrepancy between implementation and the theory that they're acquiring. So we have to take a look further at teacher preparation programs, and are they adequately preparing students to conduct these types of lessons in their classrooms. Positively though, we're seeing that STS is growing and is being realized as an important means of instruction by both teacher education programs and teachers on a national and international level. And we mentioned many of the student benefits: increased participation in society, the higher motivation, development of 21st century skills such as higher order thinking. A list of citations for the studies that were mentioned throughout our presentation today. And finally, acknowledgements. It would be wrong of me not to mention the following individuals who either had an impact in the study or were successful collaborators in helping through the process. First of all, I must mention my counterparts and colleagues, Dr. Aideen Emeshakui and Dr. Masa Kazimpour, who have been just an integral part of this process, who have been phenomenal mentors, involving me in their research projects and allowing me to really take hold on a lot of these projects. So thank you very much to them. To three individuals who I've had the opportunity to work with daily, who have impacted and influenced my instructional and professional practices. First of all, Miss Erica Forty, who is the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction for the East Haven Public Schools. She has supported every bit of professional development that I've requested to engage me and help me learn better techniques in the classroom. And to my two direct mentors and supervisors, Miss Marilee B. Noonan and Miss Maria Pompano, both who are science instructional leaders at East Haven High School. Thank you very much for coming into my classroom and providing me with constructive criticism and feedback on how to better utilize STS for student achievement. So I want to thank you all for attending our seminar today. And if you would like to preview an STS-style project that was conducted in the secondary setting, specifically in my own classroom, please visit the following website, www.lobstercrew.com, where you'll find both the science experiments and the STS-based instruction strategies that were used and discussed throughout today's lesson. So once again, thank you for your time this afternoon, and we appreciate you stopping in.